Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tolkien Collector's Guide live stream of our launch of the Guide to Tolkien's Letters. We're really excited to share what we're doing with you and make sure that you understand what we've built, give you a little bit of background on it, how to use it, what it is and is not, what we're planning to do in the future, and talk about the forthcoming book from HarperCollins as well a little bit. It's exciting to see that they're releasing a new edition of the Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, and that it will have over 150 new letters as well as expanded content from the letters that Humphrey and Christopher previously had to edit down for space concerns. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. But first of all, I want to go around the table here and let everybody say hello. Why don't we go to Trotter first?
Hello, everyone. It's quite nice to be able to finally do this. We've been working on this project for quite a long time and keeping it all in the dark to a certain degree, and it's nice to be able to finally talk about it. I think it's a great project, and I think it'd be really, really useful resource for the Tolkien community. And I hope everyone get some benefit from it.
And
yeah, Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. Hello, everybody from who is frequents the site too, all the members. We've been working on this for about a year now, and if you are at all interested in, if you've ever read through Carpenter's volume and you have thought about what it was not included, well, you're in for a big shock here.
On the trail, you're a new face for us, so go ahead and
introduce yourself. Yeah. I'm normally behind the scenes, so hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. The guys have covered it. We've been working on this for nearly a year, and it's very exciting to show you all what we've been up to, and hopefully you all use it. And the more you use it, the better it will become, and we'll keep growing it, essentially. And that's it. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. Yeah, so in just a moment, I'm going to bring it up on screen and we'll talk a little bit more about what we've built. But in general, Tolkien's letters are, of course, extremely interesting to all of us. They have provide a lot of background biographical information, some of his thoughts about the Middle-earth construction, and as well as details of his professional life and other things like that. So back in the late 70s, Humphrey Carpenter put out, he was given permission to work on a collected volume of letters. He had the close cooperation of Christopher Tolkien, and they eventually published through George Allen and Unwin the Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. Has 354 letters in it, some of which are very heavily edited. We only got a few sentences from a couple of letters, and some are many pages long and important references for scholars and fans. What they originally put together in draft was a much larger book. It had over 500 letters in it. It was intended to have much more detail in it, but then due to space concerns and the number of pages that Rainer Unwin was willing to put into the book, they trimmed it down to what eventually got published and what we saw. And what HarperCollins is doing later this year for release in November is going back to that original draft from Humphrey Carpenter and Christopher Tolkien and making it publishable. So whatever, copy editing and cleaning up, but it still is the book that they originally intended to publish in a large sense. And so it's going to be quite interesting to see. I'm very excited. I don't personally know what new letters are in there and what additional material they're going to be including, but it's a fascinating book. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, and it will, of course, be fully incorporated into the Guide to Tolkien's Letters that we're launching today as well, as soon as it's published and in the public, and people will know what's in there.
I think it's fairly safe to say it's 1/3 more letters, probably at least, than's in there. So it's actually quite a lot of new letters. So it obviously, I think I'd encourage everyone really to think about going out and buying this, even if you have the first one, because there's going to be so much more in the new one to look at. And Tolkien's letters, some of them, which we're going to talk about now, some of them are really fantastic. He writes a letter saying, "I'll write you a short letter," and it's 30 pages long, and all this sorts of. So they're great. It's a fantastic letter writer.
Absolutely.
I'd like to make a little correction that's been published in a few places. No major places, but some people will have read. Obviously, there's 50,000 more words. And there was a quote saying that letter 131, the famous letter, was 4,400 words extracted. Just to correct that, it was actually 3,208 words.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's...
So the 50,000, there is an awful lot more than people think. Because if they are quoting 4,400 words for the excised bit that was then included elsewhere, it's actually 3,208. So it's 1,200 words less. So the 150 letters begins to make a bit more sense with that in mind, because if every letter was kind of overestimated to be much more, then it couldn't be 50,000 words. But that's because, 1,200 word difference between the excised parts of letter 131 and what was quoted in some places.
Yeah,
just so people know that.
There's letters that I have seen the originals of at this point that were published in Humphrey Carpenter's and not drastically indicating they're edited. They look like a full letter, but seeing the original in copy myself, it's 3 times longer. So Humphrey Carpenter trimmed 2/3 of the letter out, and it's still a massive letter, and it's interesting to read. But there's significant material that I'm really excited to see when this book comes out in the fall, in November, in the U.S. and the U.K. and theoretically worldwide. I know Brazil is publishing a translation almost simultaneously, yes. And it will be. I personally feel like it's a major step in Tolkien scholarship, and not just regurgitating some small edits. This is a major change from the previous version of
Absolutely.
Ian asked a question, and it does look like he said, and they are adding back in additional contents of letters in the first volume that were cut down. Well, we think that's the case. Yes, they are going to be there. Yep. So where they cut out bits of the letters, they'll be putting them back in. So even if it's an existing letter, there may be extra stuff in the new version than there was in the original.
And we're hoping and I know HarperCollins is hoping that it sells well. The early numbers are based on stuff that we've seen for the site, pre-orders and things like that. They're pretty good. So that's good. That's great. We maybe someday we get a volume 2, or hopefully this is the start of something more.
Yeah. Good. So I have the guide up on screen. It is live now. If all of you jump on it immediately, you may slow me down a little bit, but it is live. It is usable. The primary focus when you first come in is the letters that are written by J.R.R. Tolkien. We have almost 1,000 of those indexed at this point. There, if you look at the top of the screen, you'll see we have well over 1,000, because we also are indexing letters that are to J.R.R. Tolkien, or even about him, that are between family members or his publisher, etc., that are interesting from a scholarly perspective. So it's very large. You can see it's much larger than the 354 letters that have been published. Our goal here is not to provide these letters. We do not have the copyright. I think this is very important to say. The copyright for these letters still belongs to J.R.R. Tolkien, which is now his estate. We are comfortable with this fact. The letters themselves, hopefully this index will be a very useful tool for you to find where these letters are held, go visit an archive of one of the major universities or other mechanisms to continue doing your research. But this guide is not publishing copyrighted materials. That's left to the estate and to HarperCollins, who are the selected publisher of the estate, to decide when and what they do. But knowing where to look to find these letters is the purpose of this guide, to help you understand which letters might be interesting for a particular topic that you're looking for, and then to be able to find more information through references and cross-links and additional information that we provide. It's a very long list here, so one of the things I've tried to provide here is the ability to do search for particular letters that touch on a given topic. So if you're interested in anything that you are looking for in a particular letter, hopefully the search bar will let you get into in-depth quickly finding letters that are interesting for your particular research. You'll notice that we have the Carpenter's letter notated on the upper right-hand corner for each search result if it was published, and then the ones that don't have that indicator are an unpublished letter. And so clicking through in this particular example, you'll see where information about this letter has come from, where you can go to figure out more about this. We have our own written summary of what the letter is about that will also help you understand, what the letter is covering, as well as cross-references to other letters that might be related to this in a conversation, etc. The search I've tried to make as flexible and powerful as possible to allow you to do fairly detailed queries, looking for words, phrases from and to particular people in date ranges. We've built a tagging system which is meant to provide more subject matter direction, because Tolkien may not have mentioned a particular phrase, but by applying these tags, we're allowing you to find letters that touch on a particular subject more quickly. And I'll get into that a little bit as well. But down at the bottom, you'll see an example that I put together where finding letters written by Christopher Tolkien mentioning his father, not to Jared Lobdell, who's a scholar that he communicated with at that time, and from the year 1978. And so it's a very limited focus, pulls those letters right up for you to show you exactly what we're aware of that he's written in that particular time frame. So it's meant to be very flexible. It should be easy to find on our site now. So you'll see there's a link on the left side in the important links section, so you can jump right into the letters guide immediately, as well as in the collect drop down. There's now a letters shortcut there to bring you into this guide. I've been talking for a really long time. I'm going to hand it off now to On the Trail. You want to talk a little bit about some of your efforts in pulling this data together for us?
Yeah, sure. Before I go into that, I was asked a question on Reddit by somebody who asked, would we be hosting copyrighted material? And obviously that answer is no. So they then asked me, well, how are we going to learn anything from a summary? And I'll say the same here that I said to that user on Reddit, that most of us have actually been using summaries for a long, long time of Tolkien's letters. So the summary is still very useful. We're able to gain so much more information from a summary. And I'm sure everybody watching this, on their bookcase, they have the companion and guide. And in the chronology and the reader's guide, most of the letters, while there are minor quotes, are provided in summary. So even if you don't have the text of Tolkien's himself, the actual summary, as we flesh it out and learn and build more and add in more information, a summary alone will be able to tell you an awful lot about what Tolkien was saying. That's for the Reddit user who will be watching as well. For me, probably some background. what was it, Jeremy? Just over a year ago, you and I spoke.
Yeah,
about
that's correct.
About this, and Trotter and Mr. Underhill were very keen. I had been transcribing Tolkien's letters for about 6 or 7 years, I would say, in total, from auction house images and the like, finding images online on other websites. And there was no place to bring all of those pieces of information together. And as websites die and they aren't saved on archive or Wayback Machine, these things become lost. So what I found is that in my own archive, I had an enormous amount of information that I couldn't give to anybody else. And then Jeremy and I spoke, should I say Urulókë, and I spoke, and yeah, Trotter and Mr. Underhill came in with reckless abandon, and the result is this. But this is just the beginning. I have many thousands of entries to make, as do the other guys, and we all have hundreds of books that we have to cross-reference. So this is very much a beginning of this. We may have been doing it for a year, but for people who are visiting, they're going to see a continued improvement, additions of new letters, which you will see on the main page, letters added this day, or most recent letters. So yeah, it's we hope that it really will be a useful tool over the years to come, and there'll be a lot more information being added.
Yeah, we'll get into future plans right now, but I want to open it up as well to Mr. Underhill. You've put a lot of effort into this as well. What are your thoughts on building it for the past year?
Yeah, one of the things that I find is most useful about this is the fact that the searchable function, the searchability function, is so easy and it's so user friendly. The two things that I think a lot of people are going to find most useful is the system that we implemented with the tags and with the references. The search ability that you can type in as Jeremy's showing us on the screen here, each letter has tags, and these tags are not done. I mean, we are continually going back and revising these, and we're continually going back and updating the references column as well. I think it's going to be very useful for you to just kind of like think about, oh, I want to know what Tolkien said about his wife Edith, for example. I want to look at all the letters that mention Edith, and you can use that search like Jeremy just did, and you can find all of those letters in one swoop, and you can go and you can read through, and so you can see all of the different tags that we have implemented here. The tag system, I think we kind of conceived of it, and then we started to kind of go through it, and then we realized we needed to streamline it a bit. So we are doing a little bit of work on the back end here to kind of streamline some of the tags. So we're trying to get rid of redundancies and things like that, as we are with the whole guide itself. But I feel that one of the most useful things about this is the tags that we put in.
Yeah. Again, another question's come up about the transcripts. The reason that the transcripts are actually on the site, and what a transcript basically is taking a letter and just converting it into typed text that the computer can deal with. We have to have the transcripts available to the computer so that it can do an index of them all. That's how you can type in part of a letter, and that will come back to you. But unfortunately, as we mentioned already, we can't show that information because of copyright, and we wouldn't want to do that. So all you're going to get back is you can type in something like Esperanto, which is an example I think that Jeremy's used before. We'll actually look at this now. Mm-hmm. You can see that the Esperanto is in the second letter, but it's not in the summary. But Tolkien has actually mentioned Esperanto in that letter. So you'll know it was there, but you can't see what he actually wrote about it. But you know now to look in that letter to dig out that letter to have a look at it. And this is something that you couldn't do at all before, really, because how would you know where he mentioned Esperanto?
And again, and that's a thing we want everybody to focus on too, is this is not, we cannot give you any of the copyrighted material, but it's a great place to go to see to seek it out. If you want to read more about that letter that where Tolkien mentions Esperanto, this will show you exactly where you need to go to get the actual letter itself. Or to
absolutely. And
yeah.
if you use that function, let's use Esperanto. If we know where the letter is held, if it's in an archive, if it's in Marquetta or the Wade Center or the Bodleian. Now, obviously, the Bodleian's archives are restricted to researchers only, but anyone can visit the Wade and by appointment, and anybody can visit Marquetta. And you can also visit places like Leeds University and Cardiff and various other places, Glasgow, Edinburgh, that all have, some of them have, a lot, and some of them have a little. So people who are researching a particular subject of Tolkien, on Tolkien, they can find that mention, although they won't find the text, but they'll know that letter contains the word Esperanto. And if they're really interested, if we know the location of the letter, or when we find the location of the letter in the future, you will be able to know where that letter is housed, if it's been published, where it was referenced. If it was sold at auction, we should have that information gathered and catalogued. In some cases, some archive pages, some auction pages still work. So the details are still there. You can see the original auction listings. In some cases, you can see the letter images. Remember that if you take the image for yourself, the text of it is still under copyright.
Yes.
But you'll be able to use all of the different functions to be able to find out where to research better for each letter or subject.
Yeah,
and as
just
we move forward and add more info, that will get better and better.
Yeah, and as you can see on the screen, Jeremy just he typed in the Marquette archives, and all of the letters that we have that are housed in the Marquette archives, they came up by year. And so if you're making a day trip to Marquette, if you've made an appointment and you're making a day trip to Marquette, this is a great way. You can take this with you, and then you can know exactly what you want to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to mention that the indexes of what are in the archives are publicly available. You can go on Marquette's website. You can go on the Wade Center and Bodleian. Have some cataloging that's listed there, but we're also in early stages of communication with the archivists at the various university holdings, and hope that we can provide a more integrated and deeper data set than what's publicly available over time, with their cooperation and with all the permissions that are necessary. Again, we're not looking for copyrighted material, but having a more in-depth ability to see what's held there, what is available for public research, what needs permissions first. There's all sorts of information that'll be helpful for scholars as they're trying to do research to know what next steps to take. So I think it's pretty clear that this is initial launch of our project, and we have years of plans for how to extend the capabilities and the data set and integrations and data sharing. There's so much that we're planning to do on the progression of this. We do want you to all to stay in touch, to keep an eye on the site. Hopefully beyond just latest changes, which is on the letter's homepage where you can see the newest additions to it, but we'll be communicating in a variety of different ways what we're adding to it, what new capabilities are there. And we do want community input. I think it's important to say this is not a personal project of ours. We're obviously building the first data set and getting this thing going, but we want help. There's thousands of fans, collectors, and scholars who know more than we do in particular areas, or come across references, or own some unpublished letters, or who knows. So beyond, you'll see on the homepage, we have a little "please contact us" sentence in there. That's just to get us started. we'd love to build some more interactive tools that will let people have the ability to contribute to this project over time. It's really meant to be a living tool set beyond just what we built today and beyond just what the four of us have the time and knowledge to pull together. So it's
one of
Just on
the sorry, I was just going to say one of the areas that I very briefly want to mention is disinformation as well. This site we want to use to counter that as well. Tolkien, there have been quite a few letters have been forged by Tolkien, and we're trying to add those. You can see one on here at the moment, one in 1943, allegedly. That letter is something now that will appear. We're going to try and make this so it's searchable and come back as a forgery. So if someone was then going to try and say reference this letter, not thinking it was a real one, they would now be able to check on here and find out that it wasn't real. And that should stop a lot of because it is a bit of a concern about some of these forged letters. There were so many of them at one point that just coming in and people thinking that they're real Tolkien letters. And we're trying to make it so that there's no way you would think this was a real message, real letter from Tolkien going forward.
Exactly. Urulókë, could we go to any letter and go to the start discussion?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, you caught me multitasking. Here we go. So there's at the top of the screen, in the three buttons, you'll see letter home, back to my search results, but the start discussion button. So I am not logged in. You're going to see I don't have the right to post, but if you're logged in, just as any user of the site, you can click on this button that says start discussion. I got to back up twice. And that will take you to a thread that's specifically about this letter. If you're the first one to be commenting on a letter, it says start discussion, but it will also say view discussion if there's already posts that are on it. So if you're interested, I have a question on this letter, can somebody help me out? Each and every letter will have its own thread in the forums for this discussion to start or continue, ask questions from, as we call ourselves, the scribes, the little group of us who have been building this. But the intent is with that discussion button to allow conversation to start and continue and help people out when they have issues, if they want to add information, they just have question about the material. Again, we're going to mention this multiple times in here. We are not going to share the images or the transcript text ourselves. We have no problem helping out collectors find original sources, point them in the right direction to where the material has been published before. But it's just something that's not sustainable, and it turns us into a publisher. If we share this information out, we're now stepping on the copyright, and this is intended to be a cooperative tool with the copyright holders. Again, there's letters not just from Tolkien in here, but there's multiple copyright holders. It's meant to be an extension and to allow scholars to find what they're looking for, but to be respectful for who owns these originals.
I think it's probably now a good time to talk about the numbering. In the same way that that when the new book comes out, people are worried about what happens with the numbers. We have to also be slightly. We had to come up with some different ways of storing these letters.
Yeah,
we couldn't really use the numbers that are in Carpenter's letters because that's only 354 of them. And what about all the others? And they're also in chronological order. So what we've done. And these numbers may change, but we actually have two numbers really for them at the moment. We've got TCG numbers, which are TCG letter numbers, and Carpenter numbers. And you can actually reference directly, Jeremy could probably show this, you can go straight to a letter by using a URL for it, depending on which one it is.
Yeah, so, and we've got if you, because some of the letters like Phil said earlier, like letter 131, that's sort of like taken on a life of its own. but it's not necessarily, if you do a search for a number, we have a spot like, did you mean Carpenter's letter? Like
that one.
Like
yes.
Jeremy has did you mean Carpenter? This is number TCG number 19. Did you mean Carpenter's letter number 19? So we've got little fail safes for things like that, so you can easily find things. You don't have to click through, and
you can also go straight. You can actually reference via a URL. You can reference Carpenter's letter 19 or the TCG letter 19.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So just a little bit technical here, but I wanted to walk through. So as a TCG reference number, we need a unique index that can always find exactly the letter you're talking about. Those will never change. But they're not going to be the only way to index through these, right? So you'll find, as this is a living system, there are gaps. We've created letters and then deleted them because it turned out they were duplicates or there was misinformation. So the TCG letter number is at a very low level, always going to be unique, and it doesn't imply any priority. It does not imply chronology. It's just as information is added to the database, it gets a new number, and that number is permanent. As Trotter mentioned, we do have the ability to jump directly to, like, if I want to go to letters 131 from Carpenter, it's hard to see on a smaller screen, but I've just put the L in front of the number. So L131 is Carpenter's letters. And that'll take you directly to Carpenter's letter 131. And that's a permalink URL that will always work. We'll have the indexing for the new edition, whatever numbering scheme they decide to use. In the new edition coming in November, there will be permalink URLs that will always work for whatever numbering scheme they come up with there. I'm planning on overlaying other indexes as well. I don't know what they're going to be, but the idea is that we don't want the corruption of letter numbers over time, where it's like, which number am I talking about? There's going to be different indexing systems, and we want to support the variety of ways to access this information. It's meant to be useful rather than overbearing. We've spent the entire year passionately discussing what the right numbering scheme or reference scheme. It doesn't have to be a number. It could be
very passionately.
It could be a date string. It could be some other method of referencing these. But with a living system, every time we find a new letter, if we find a letter from 1942 in 3 months, it shows up at Sotheby's at auction, and we go back to insert it. If we numbered chronologically, it would change the numbering scheme, or we'd have to come up with fractional numbers, or, oh my God, if we use a date-based system for indexing, there's a lot of letters that don't have known dates. We know.
We don't know what they are.
Right.
Maybe it was exactly.
There's letters that just have a vague time period.
And I'm gonna hop back in here really briefly. I want to go to Carpenter's letters and scroll down. Right here on the left side, you'll see chronologically that 31 and 29 have moved, because chronologically now, since 1980, when the book first came out, we now know when the letter was written. The date wasn't certain when Carpenter could see it, but now we know. And so even Carpenter's numbers are no longer chronological, because the date of those letters is now better known. We found the original, or it's shown up at auction, who knows. So any numbering scheme breaks over time. And so I did not want to...
It breaks straight away, doesn't it? As soon as you've done it and something new comes out, it's broken.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, I wanted to say we have a numbering scheme. It's the TCG letter number. I have no plans to change that. It's going to stay the way it is. So permalinks, if you're sharing a link from here to Facebook or in a paper or something, that should work as long as the site is live. We're not going to change those. We might come up with a different indexing system later. I don't really care at this point. I'm not apologetic that the system is mostly meaningless, because as we found in our discussions, it's not possible to take such a complex data set and linearize it to make it all fit in one dimension and just numerically put them in order. It just can't happen. And so I'm not too worried. There's no meaning in the numbers. They just let you find, they let you refer back to or bookmark something that you're interested in, and allows me to sort them and mark them individually.
Yeah, and we knew that everybody watching, people coming to the guide in the future, we're going to be coming from a variety of different aspects. They were going to be looking for, they were going to want to look through the letters in a variety of different ways. So the numbering system is just another way for us to organize the data and for you to search the data. We wanted you to have multiple ways that you could go through the data, go through the letters, and we wanted to have multiple starting points and multiple ways that you could access this guide.
Yep.
Carl's question is, if Tolkien wrote to the same person twice in one day, you do need to have a unique number for it. So I think I don't think our numbers are really going to be used that much, but they are there and they're unique. And if you're talking about a letter, it's that specific one. So if he wrote 3 or 4, which one is it going to be that you're referring to? And even you have to have numbers for this, unfortunately. I don't really think there's any other way around knowing it's definitely that letter. Yeah.
And internally, we've had the same conversations over and over again. So even between 4 people, we've struggled with exactly how things will work. And that's just 4 people. So people who use it, they're going to have different ideas about how to use the guide. Some people will want chronologically. At the bottom of every letter, there is a next and previous, apart from the first and last entries. So you can go through chronologically using the next or the previous, and you'll get the next letter that Tolkien wrote. Other people will want to use tags. Other people will use direct searches. There's no correct method. There's no one way for everybody. So our system, we hope, has made it navigable enough for everybody. Just going back one step, Katie asked a question about contacting us to collaborate or help in the community. On the main page of the letters guide, yes, thank you, there is a contact us section, and you can send that. That will go to Urulókë. Or, of course, on any letter, you can start a discussion, ask questions about the letter. If there was suggestion in the summary, or if you knew other information and other books that we could reference, we obviously welcome all of that information too.
Yep.
Yes.
And yeah, the contact us form that I have up, it's linked from the letters homepage, and I have it up. It's also in the footer of the site, so it should be findable. You don't have to be logged in. The intention here is for just someone breezing through, has a question, or they don't want to create an account. That's the difference between the contact us form and the start discussion button. You do have to be logged in if you want to do a start discussion.
But I will say, if you come to the guide and you don't want to create an account, that's the wrong thing to think. You should think, I do want to create an account. That's what you should think.
You should.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Constantly trying to add value to make it, obvious that, of course I want to have an account. I can do so much more than if I don't. But yes, this is one of the things, is to participate in the conversation around the letters guide, for example.
So as an example, so say that you find a letter that's not mentioned at all on here. I'd absolutely encourage people just to go in and just go to the contact us and actually say and some information as to how we can find it, because we're absolutely great that the more of these we find, the better, as far as I'm concerned. It makes the guide better. It makes this letters section better.
Yep, and it's a little cumbersome, the mechanisms now. I do want to make this more of a community-driven project, so stay tuned in the next 6 months or beyond for more ability to contribute changes to the data set and letters, etc. As Trotter mentioned, we always want to be careful of spamming and kind of stay away from a fully publicly accessible, wiki type environment, we do want to do reference checking and make sure permissions are followed and copyright and everything else that we want to do. But we're going to move beyond just a contact us form, to allow people to contribute to this. It's just something that we could do for phase one. I do think it's good mentioning that, this is absolutely, we had to draw a line in the sand and say, when are we going to publicize this? We've been working on it for a year. I think, fairly obviously picked this moment in time because of the announcement of the new edition of letters. They're very much on people's minds at this time, but we in no way feel that we're done. This is a growing tool. I do expect there to be bugs found or new feature requests for people wanting to use this. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat about chronological sorting. That's a fairly obvious place to start, and whenever you're doing searches, that's how the results are presented currently, because that was easy. It doesn't have to be the only way to present these. There's ways that we're thinking of making the functionality better for being able to use this as a tool. The tagging system, I've had some conversations with James Tauber from the Digital Tolkien Project about tagging and the nomenclature and how tags work. And there is no perfect system, and there's no system that works for everyone. What we've built to date, so what you'll see if you're browsing the guide to letters today, is the four of us. We've all gone through and kind of thought of tags that we thought would be useful, and we've all individually applied those. And then we kind of sanity check each other and we talk about it. The tagging system is going to live and grow. It may not be all that useful. It was something we thought would get us off the ground and start allowing us to categorize letters and pull things together rather than just by text string and by date, that you could have subject matter in other ways and archive locations and things like that. So tagging is a system we've started, and it will grow over time. We fully expect to add more features and functionality to that as we go through. I expect there to be useless tags that we end up pruning from
There's
it.
probably already useless tags in there, yeah.
Yep.
But if you and this is something that everybody can help us with. If you think of a tag that you don't see there, definitely let us know, and we can go and we can add that tag.
Yeah, and you can do that by just starting a discussion on the letter and say you think it should be tagged this way. We'll add that tag if we think it's if it's a sensible. We can't tag every single word in the letter.
No.
We have tried to come up with tags. But if there's something, and also if there's a tag that you think's missing from a letter, particularly the published ones that people are aware of, and they think, oh, this is a very key part of this letter.
Yep.
We haven't tagged it as that. I think it again add that, and we'll look at adding them.
Yep. I got a great question here from Janet. As the discussion sections grow, I think this is a fantastic idea. The forum posts are already searchable. But that's just generic site search to find particular mentions. It is not what you're asking for. So I think this is an excellent idea to make the discussions returnable in the actual letter search itself. Because right now I actually have two completely separate searches. There's one that's extremely focused on letters, and it just helps you find what you're looking for in the letters database. And then there's a general site search that does everything else. I want to combine the two and make it more user controllable about what results you're interested in. So absolutely, the discussions themselves, I think, are a fantastic thing to involve into the letters guide itself.
And the four of us have never come up with that idea.
Yeah, no,
I haven't thought of that. I think we should give Janet a job.
Yeah, I think we need to make Janet a scribe.
You're hired. You're hired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim had a question. I think we can all kind of touch on this a bit. There's so many more letters to add. On the trail, why don't you start with yours? You've got a good long list to kick us off.
Okay, so I knew this would be asked, so I worked out. Now this could be wrong by maybe 500 up or 500 down, but I estimate that we have around about 800 books to cross-reference, around about 2,500 journals, chronology and reader's guide from Hammond and Skull alone has more than 800 letter references to add. New letters from their collection is around 400. I have at least 280 related to Tolkien and Pauline Baines that have only ever been listed in one place, and even Hammond and Skull didn't touch on all of them because they couldn't because of page restriction. So I estimate that in the next sort of 3 or 4 years, we're talking about 4,000 and new entries on top of the 1,000 that we've already got.
You can
around
see,
about 5,000 in total.
You can see all of us sweating as On the Trail's going through all of this.
Yeah.
I would also say that we tend to find, at the moment, it seems to be a couple a month, probably new ones turn up. That in auction houses or on TV programs. That's not nowhere near as much, but that's probably 20 or 30 new ones a year, at least normally.
Trotter's right about that. We tend to just paying attention to auction listings and paying attention to what's being put out there. We have added 2 to 3 a month, and so that there's no reason to think that that's not going to continue.
Yeah, on top of what we've been adding, there has been the auction sites and new references to books, to letters that we haven't even touched on yet. In all of our collections, there will be hundreds of letters, unique letters. We just haven't got to them yet. We're 4 people, and help. People can help.
Yeah, exactly.
You can. Yes, people can.
The more people help us, the quicker this will get.
Yeah. I got to jump way back. It's going to take me a moment to find the comment, but we had a good question. There it is. Any thoughts here for the official published book? This is not talking about our site, but an audio book. I'm just trying to go through and clear up some questions that have been hanging in the background of the chat for a little while.
I have a little bit of insight into this, but only through detective work. It's now vanished, but when Amazon first listed the new letters volume, they did include WhisperSync as enabled. Now, when a book doesn't have an audio function, Amazon don't tend to list a WhisperSync enabled function, whereas on the new book it's now vanished. But when on the first day it was there, WhisperSync was one of the functions. So I don't know, maybe the Wests will do it.
Yeah, the Wests could do this.
Yeah,
I'd imagine that Andy Serkis is probably too busy doing other stuff in Hollywood, but they could probably they could probably do it.
Yeah, if there's going to be an audiobook, I think it's unlikely, but if there is going to be an audiobook, I would look at some HarperCollins using somebody like the Wests to do that.
Who are very good. They do a great job on. One of them could be Tolkien, and one could be who was talking back to him. So you get the you could very easily do use both of them.
Yeah, I have no idea, no inside information. I would love to. I would love to hear an audiobook myself. If I had to guess, I would say they're going to see how the book sells before they commit to doing an audiobook.
It does take a long time to do as well. It's a good year to produce something like that.
At least.
It would be fantastic if they did. It would be next year, I think, before we hear any rumors or rumblings, if it were to happen. So there's no real way to answer yet, but I love the idea. I'll pass that on. There's another question here, because we've been talking about community input, etc. If we're going to expand our team, I think there's a great question because there's multiple layers to it. So there's the discussion format, which is open to the public. There is, at the other extreme, there's the Scribe project, which is honestly, we're as a private group amongst ourselves, we're handling copyrighted information, right? And so
we have to be careful.
We have to be careful.
Yeah.
We're not doing this with permission or blessing, but it is public information. So we're looking at things that are available from archives and auction records and books that you can purchase and stuff like that. But collecting it all in one place and then disseminating it falls outside the purview of what any private group is allowed to do. Once you start publishing and sharing, you're getting into copyrighted materials and you're becoming a publisher, even if it's just online. So we're going to be careful. We were talking before we started the live stream about layers that we're going to add in here, which is being able to help with the public facing side of things. So tags and references and the summaries and things. But I think as far as the underlying infrastructure, which does have the unpublished copyrighted materials, we're a long ways off, I think, before we're vastly expanding that team.
To Holly's question,
sure,
about the British Library, the short answer is yes. I am planning when I have time to talk to them. There are a number of letters there that aren't catalogued anywhere. I imagine that you know more of them than us at the moment. But yeah, the answer to that is yes. We will be looking at other locations, such as the British Library, to expand on on that side. And we hope your book goes well, by the way.
We do, yes.
Yeah, we do.
I'm really looking forward to that.
We'll get you on here at some point. I absolutely would love to.
I think we will.
But yeah, speaking, this is an excellent question to just kind of dive into just the archives. I mentioned at the very beginning, but now that everybody has a little better sense of what we've built here, I'll use the Wade Center as an example. We have probably 24 letters where in our index it just says more information needed. We know the letters in the Wade, we know who it's to and from and the date, and there's no other information in there. So we're in contact with the archivist. There's no conversations yet, but the plan is, what can we share? Is there more than what you've publicly indexed that you'd be willing for us to share? We also can visit the archives and collect our own information if we can view the letters and write summaries. This is all on a very long to-do list of visiting the archives, contacting archivists, getting permissions, assembling further public information. You've mentioned the British Library. There's a collection at Leeds, Glasgow. We've mentioned the Wade and Marquette. There's, I want to say USC. There's a university in California that has a pretty good archive.
That's all you, Jeremy.
Exactly. So yes, we are in no way done. We have a laundry list of on the trail mentioned books, but also archives, and going through and making sure that they're indexed properly, at least that they exist, and then trying to expand the information in our guide to make it more useful to know, oh, I need to go to the British Library because that letter talks about the subject that I'm researching. That's the type of index or guide that we think is going to be useful, is to not just say, oh, here's 1,000 letters and here's where there's located and here's, when they last sold at auction. It really is, the study of Tolkien's writings, and to be able to understand where to find these and to visit these archives that are so important, these universities that are assembling material that they're not allowed to publish. They're not going to put Tolkien's letters up on their website or put it in a searchable index where you can see it all, because they don't have the copyright. They might own the original letter or many letters, but you have to actually go and visit. And that's an important part of what they're providing to the scholarly community, is archiving these things in a place where the public can come and see it. It's not in a private hands where someone's bought the letter at a Sotheby's auction and they sit on it for 10 years as an investment. That happens too. So it's important to understand where things are and be able to find them, and to hopefully let people know that this prolific writer wrote a lot more than just what Humphrey Carpenter was able to share with us so far. Let's see. We got anything else? We're kind of in the Q&A area here. I think we've touched on this. Just about everything in here. I do want to say thanks to a lot of people. I'm going to mention one or two. I know we've all talked with similar people, so a lot of these names are going to come up more than once. We'll go around the table, but Carl Hostetter, who I've seen in the chat, has been absolutely outstanding at helping myself and On the Trail and others. And we'll send him a snippet of handwriting and say, what in the world did Tolkien write here? It looks
and
like
5 minutes later he comes back.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl
Tolkien's
always
handwriting. Tolkien's
Yeah,
handwriting.
we have a kind of a week period. We have a 1 week period. If we can't read it after a week, we'll send it to Carl, and 5 minutes later Carl comes back and that says yesterday.
Yeah.
And
Carl always knows.
Yeah.
So go around the table. I'm looking. There's another comment in here I'm going to pull up, but let's go around on the people. Wayne and Christina, as far as just being able to answer questions, I mean, they've done so much. We're standing on the shoulders of giants with their work on chronology, just helping us understand the depth of the letters that are out there. And obviously our goal is not to take the chronology and just put it online. That's their work, but it's a starting point for us to look and say, oh, these letters exist, and they've given some indication of where it came from, so that we can then show the connection between their work and the public repositories and the auction listings, etc. So I don't think this project would be half of what it is without all the research and the help that they've given us, specifically when we ask questions about their books and their published writing. So it's fantastic getting help from them as well.
Yeah, Wayne and Christina are a big one for me. I think to them sometimes questions would seem a bit silly, as I'm sure they would to Carl. And afterwards you think to yourself, why did they ask that question? That was very simple. So Wayne and Christina have been an enormous help to me with helping me rationalize some details that didn't make sense. One of the things about going through this process was, and the other guys will feel the same, is that we were able to get much closer to Tolkien's true intent, or what he really said. If people go into the chronology, if they look for things, if they have an ebook version, look for tag words or search phrases like partly printed. You'll find lots of expanded little moments from letter 200, and in chronology you'll find more of it, and they helped me to understand how those things connected together and how they flowed. The same with Carl, with understanding handwriting and such things. Just on the thanks, I don't know if he's had a chance to come here tonight, but Jay Long, who's a member of the Tolkien Collector's Guide, had a very similar library to myself, and we were able to collaborate purely for this project to collate all of our information together, so it could be linked to auction houses or a rough translation or a full translation, which we were able to create summaries from and those things. So yeah, Jay Long, who is a member of this site, was a great help too. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and last on my list, definitely not least, is Bill Fliss, the archivist at Marquette. Fantastic resource. And Fred, he's on vacation right now. Hopefully you're not watching this live and enjoying yourself. We're going to talk again in a week or so. I'm going to tie this into some of the comments that are going on over here. So fantastic. Bill's been so helpful. He responds to our questions and helping us understand what's in the archives above and beyond what's available on the public website. So
yeah, letter types from Bill.
Yeah.
The document he sent me, was an enormous help. Even just small details, knowing whether Tolkien typed a letter or wrote a letter or signed it.
Yep.
All of these things, they all add to the tapestry of the richness of the guide. So yeah, Bill as well.
Yep. And so anybody else had a thank you? I wanted to jump into a question from online, but I don't want to curtail. There have been so many people helping. I have a couple I can't name off the top. I haven't checked with them to see if they'd be willing. But there's already the collecting community, especially all of us directly involved in this project, have been watching eBay and auctions for a decade or multiple decades, just slowly accumulating our own little hard drives of links and images and saving web pages before they disappear. And that's what's really been the core of how we built this, is these archives of fans who have gone out and accumulated this material and saved it. And I'm sure there's people out there who've done more than us. And we love to, you'll see it as you go through our guide. You'll see, like, here's an item. My records show that it was from an eBay listing in 2007, but none of us have the listing anymore. So we kind of know it was there, but we've lost that information. Somebody out there, you'll find them as you're going through. It's like the more information needed is a very common tag that we've put on a lot of these letters.
Just going to Valmer's point, I hope this project will push collectors around the world to share with you what they have in their own collections. Absolutely. And
yeah, we hope so.
Absolutely. Anybody out there who has a letter of Tolkien's, they do not have to share the letter with us. If they want to share a summary, if they want to share just the sender, receiver, and a date, whether it was typed, if they just want to say some tag words, it relates to Lord of the Rings or languages or any other subjects, that is acceptable too. Somebody may have a fantastic original Tolkien letter that no one's ever known about, and they keep it to themselves, and that's their right. But if they want to share minor details with us, that also will help too, and that will help others understand, if what Tolkien was writing about in 1942 and June, and we can link it to other letters, and we can build a tapestry of all of this information. It will all help. Every last detail that anybody wants to help us with, you are more than welcome, because there is still a huge way to go.
Yeah, and we're not the only project like this. I've seen some comments about German collected letters for Wagner, I think it was. And Janet, I'm going to bring up your comment again, because I think this is important. Very similar project. I only heard about this yesterday from Janet, so I haven't seen anything about it yet. But C.S. Lewis fans, I know he's a close friend of Tolkien, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of crossover here. We have a lot of letters to and from C.S. Lewis. But check out Mythlore. Obviously, several other journals as well, but I have a soft spot for Mythlore as well. I'm really interested to see this project. I'm really interested in collaborating. That's going to lead me to the next couple of comments, which came from David. And can I get 2 comments on? No, I have to do one at a time. Let's get to the correct one. So David was asking citation downloads in this comment, and then the next comment he had was the whole database. I'm going to put that in air quotes here, whole database. I absolutely want to make this data openly accessible. And again, we're drawing a line between the public data, which is going to be references, tags, summary. I got to check with these guys on copyright, because they wrote some of the summaries and it's their copyright. We want to make sure everybody's willing with data sharing. But yes, structured data for this is going to be, some sort of living, publishable. I want people, I've worked with James Tauber, I mentioned him before, Digital Tolkien Project, on collaborations, and I've published a couple little charts which show, what days of the week did Tolkien like to write on? Because it's really easy when you have all these dated letters, just shove it in and do a comparison query on what day of the week was it on, June 7th, 1953, and you get this interesting pattern. And there's all sorts of cool things you can do with an open data set like this. So I don't know what we're just trying to get the data in a structure, and once that structure is finalized and we're happy with it, yes, there's going to be some sort of publishing interface that I would love to put online and get other people playing with this, and it has to be living because we're never done. There's going to be
Yeah,
more
we're going to keep
information.
changing it all the time, so it's
Yep.
going to be it'll be a snapshot of the data at
Yeah.
a certain
Yep.
Yeah,
period,
absolutely.
and we'd have to issue snapshots if we do go down this route, say every 6 months or something. We might do a new one, but that's something that we will be looking at. But that isn't actually for today, because today is trying to get the data in there and get people to use it, which is what I'm really looking forward to.
And the core will stay the same. Like the way that we have it set up will stay the same, but subtle changes are going to be happening all the time. We think that the skeletal core structure that we've set up is going to be very useful for people, and that will not change. But like Trotter said, it's the subtleties of the guide there'll be additions, there'll be tweaks, they'll be happening all the time.
Yeah.
And hopefully we get suggestions from the community.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You get ideas, you're playing with it, something seems a bit problematic, then yeah, come to us, tell us your ideas. We've already had one from Janet. That's what the community is for, as everybody knows. This community is open, and they help each other, and that's what we need.
I want to bring up Holly's comment here because it kind of ties into that, which is, trying to show in our data set what it's based on, which is, is the complete letter known? Is it partial? Do we only have a handful of quotes? It's important to know. It's a good data point, and that's why I wanted to make it public for how much of, we call it the transcript of the actual transcribed words that Tolkien wrote, which is, it's been a large part of the last year because most of his letters are handwritten, and his handwriting is a fascinating topic of study in and of itself. And we might be misreading things, and so as a community, having the four of us and sending questions off to other experts in his handwriting, etc., the goal is to have what he actually wrote. And I wanted to tie this into Carpenter's letters again, which is, we don't know, the four of us personally, how much of the published book of letters is edited. There are cases where Carpenter put in the 4 dots to say, I've just excised a paragraph or multiple paragraphs.
Yeah, but there's not that many of those, though.
There's not that many of those, and we know for a fact that a large number of them were heavily edited at this point, now that the new volume is coming out. So in our guide, unless we've seen the original letter show up at auction or something else, I made the command decision. We've marked them all as partial. We don't know if they're complete until somebody can actually verify, did Carpenter edit it? Did he make changes? And so that's an ongoing project. You'll notice, like, you look in Carpenter's letter 131, it looks awesome. Why is that not marked as complete? It's like, well, there's a lot more coming, is my understanding. I don't know about that letter number 131 in particular, but a lot of them were edited, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes in November in the new volume. And I'm hopeful that with cooperation from the community and the archivists, etc., that we can determine how many are actually complete and how many were edited by Carpenter, and provide that information, because it's important.
It is. Just before my computer decided to reboot itself, I was going to say, when we're talking about thanks, and I don't know if you mentioned this, but I really would like to thank the 2 people who are behind my picture at the moment, who are mentioned on there, which is Humphrey, Carpenter, and Christopher Tolkien. Because without them, we wouldn't be doing this project at all, I don't think. It's really down to them doing the letters in the first place, and going through, get the initial, because if you imagine how difficult it would have been for Carpenter to do this in the first, he had to go to people and say, please, can you send me by post a copy of your letter so that I can type it out, and then I'll send it back, and hopefully you might get it lost. And of course the postman might lose it on the way, in which case you've lost the thing, but at least and to get so many of these letters, and of course Christopher was absolutely vital, because Christopher was telling him where the letters were sent to. So without
Well-
Christopher, he couldn't have done this in the first place. So it really is thank you, and also to Rainer as well, to Rainer Rumlin for publishing this.
Well, you can-
We've got to thank all three of those, and I think
Yeah.
it's because of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are now doing this, and there's a new version of the letters coming out.
Well, you can imagine just how difficult this probably was for Christopher too, because a lot of these letters were personal correspondence
Very
between him
personal.
and his father, and so you can I'm sure everybody out there listening can imagine just how you can put yourself in Christopher's situation and know that these are going to be published. I bet it was very, very difficult for him to sit down and kind of decide what was
Absolutely.
going to be published and what was going to be kept private.
Yeah, I had.
When
Go ahead.
sorry, when Mr. Underhill was adding the published letters, I kind of kept abreast of it while I was adding the unpublished letters. But I would stop and I would go back to a letter and see, oh, you've added such and such a letter, and reading the letters that Tolkien sent to Christopher during the Second World War. I found them almost horrific. So the fact that he was able to let somebody edit them and publish them so that we could all read them, I think some people would say, well, it's to sell books. But I don't think that's ever been a motivation of Christopher Tolkien, was to sell books. I think his motivation was always to represent his father and his secondary world and his academic duties and his life in the best way possible. Yeah. And I think to share some of those letters with us, I think was remarkable, to be perfectly honest. And when we were going through this process, I read them anew, and I just thought it's extraordinary. Some of them bring tears to your eyes. The trauma that Tolkien felt, not only of not being able to go out and fight himself because he was too old, but the fact that his sons were out there as well, and it wasn't just one of them; it was all of them. And it was remarkable that we got any volume at all in the first place. Now we're going to get a second one, and the community here now has hopefully some, with this project, something else they can use. I just want to make one thanks, not that we're turning into the thanks factory, but myself, Trotter, and Mr. Underhill, and I'm sure the other two will agree with me. We've been all busy adding letters and various things, but the three of us for the last year have been coming up with idea after idea after idea and improvement after improvement.
Bothering someone about that.
we've always been bothering one
Who was that we bother about that?
No,
Yeah, and that is Urulókë, that is Jeremy, because he has put all of this into motion. This is Jeremy's website, and all of the editing, the code, all of the structure you see has all been done by Jeremy, probably when he should have been asleep. So yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to Jeremy, because without him, none of us could have come together and
We wouldn't have this project. We wouldn't have this project. So a huge thank you to Jeremy for that.
I make it a point to thank Jeremy at least once every 2 weeks, and to point out how awesome he is at least once a month.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm going to throw up one little. Katie had mentioned it, and it was one that I wanted to make sure I thank, which is James. I mentioned him more than once now. Check out his website. He is, also a software developer, so he's kind of helped me as we're going through, like, structurally, what's a good way to present this data. His search interface is awesome. If you haven't seen that before, for finding words in Tolkien's published books, he's got a large corpus that you can figure out, where did these words appear. And we're planning on having the unpublished letters findable through his search interface as well. So when you're on search.digitaltolkien.com and you're looking for a phrase, he'll direct you to the unpublished letters in our index. This, I think, will be, I'm envisioning it for, like, auctioneers and collectors to say, it's like, oh, I have this letter, is it real? I'll just type in the first sentence of this letter, and the search function will bring you right to it. You can say, oh, here's the letter. Is it marked as a forgery? Is it known or unknown on the TolkienGuide's, letter?
That's a really useful resource, which doesn't really exist at the moment. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
another thing it's going to do.
Hey,
this
and when you find a quote on Goodreads, go to Digital Tolkien and put in a couple words from that quote, and it will instantly tell you, is that a real quote or not?
Just assume it isn't.
It's probably not. If it's on Goodreads, it's probably not.
Yep. And I'm going to cover up some of our faces here with this one last time, just because it's so important. Let me come back over here. So a complete Letters of Tolkien.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah, that's
a complete in the sense that you've got it capitalized. No, it'll never happen. There might. Everybody's watching to see how this book sells. Is this new edition interesting?
Including HarperCollins.
Including HarperCollins. I am sure if this new book sells well, that further letters might see the light of day at some point. I mean, it really comes down to, do people care? I mean, the people watching this live stream, obviously, the four of us, more than obviously, but is this going to sell 500 copies or 5,000 or 50,000 is going to determine what happens next.
And obviously, Complete also does mean you do need to edit these, because some of the letters, there's no point having a letter about Tolkien paying his tobacco bill. Really, it's just not worth putting that in a book.
Yeah.
And also duplication. You don't need 100 references to the same thing. Yes, you can prove concept. You can prove that Tolkien absolutely meant what he said by showing it 100 times. But that would simply be a waste of paper and ink, and it would make for enormous volumes that were unwieldy. They have to be shaped.
That doesn't appeal to the casual reader either. Like that wouldn't sell very many copies.
Editing is very important for these things. It's very important for letters.
The four of us have talked about that. That's something I want to add as another layer to the interface for these. Right now, we have not prioritized anything, right? If a letter falls on a date, it shows up chronologically. If you type in a word and that letter contains the word, it shows up. I do think there is value in having some sort of editorial, this letter's more important than that.
It's more interesting.
This letter is, just he wrote a single sentence to a fan saying, thank you for your letter, I really liked it. I mean, we've got dozens and dozens of those in the database. So sometimes when you get a search result of 50 or 500 letters for something you're looking for, where do you start? So absolutely, we're not going to bury anything, but I think providing some additional layers of interest and importance, and it might even just come down to how often is this letter mentioned, how many references does it have. I don't know how we're going to solve this, or we might solve it multiple ways, but right now it's very flat, and I think providing some more insight and editorial input from us and the community is going to add an additional layer of helpfulness to what we've built.
Just on complete letters.
Yep.
It's worth noting that even we are not complete. If you remember, Trotter, we actually decided on only including one instance of a stock letter where there's no other information. So only when Tolkien added to it, a lot of the time, a letter would be written by his secretary, and it would go to him to be signed, and he would add a little scribble onto the end of it. Those are really interesting. But stock replies, I think I have 70 or 80 of them.
There's lots.
There's a lot.
We have one entry, an example of a stock reply. They're just not interesting.
There's even some
our guide.
Yeah, there's even some where I suspect that his signature is a facsimile on it, and he didn't even see it at all. So I wouldn't. There's no way you'd ever put that in. letters. Well, what is the point?
Yeah. There's a lot of those stock replies. There's a lot of the thanks for your letter. I'm working on the Silmarillion currently. There's a lot of those too.
Yep.
Stop bothering me. I'm writing the Silmarillion.
Yeah, stop bothering me. I'm working on the Silmarillion.
And there's also, we touched on it with Christopher Tolkien, that there are also the letters that none of us are ever going to see. Mm-hmm. There are letters that maybe Carl Hostetler, Wayne and Christina have clearly seen and are off limits. The family, have a private archive of letters.
Rightly so.
Rightly so. Tolkien was entitled to a private life. Mm-hmm. There are a handful of authors that I'm interested in that have, warts and all collections of letters. One of them is T.S. Eliot, who I have the 8 volumes of his collected letters, and they are immensely interesting. The ones that they didn't have room for, many of them were published online on T.S. Eliot's website. But did I really need to know that he was buying fish at a supermarket the next day and would be late to somebody's house? No, but they are there. So there are some authors who are being treated warts and all, but Tolkien is never going to be that. And there will remain probably a few hundred letters that we will never have access to, and we would never try to. The family regard them as entirely private, and we respect that.
Yep. I want to come back to like the form letters. I'm going to be writing a much longer article about these, but it's interesting to me, and I want to talk a tiny bit about interesting offshoots of this research, and I want others who are using our guide to tell us about how they're using it. But for myself, for the fan reply, he started out responding. He got a secretary. He went through multiple secretaries. He would sign them. He would sometimes handwrite a postscript on some of them to add a little, detail. And we've even seen some that have the post proscriptorium, I think it is, the PP, where a secretary signed it. It's not his signature. It says his name, but it was his secretary who put the PP next to it and wrote it out. And we don't know, did he dictate it, or is this there's this whole fascinating thing about how he handled fan mail, and you can hear the frustration growing over the decades as he's like, if I answer your questions, you'll never get the next book. Please stop, these questions, you can hear it building up in there, and it's just, and
there's some great things as well, like he tells people that he's gone to a secret location, but then the postcode on the letter says Bournemouth, so it's not that secret.
Just to go back to my point there, Carl Hostetler does say, so I apologise on that. I said maybe Carl or Wayne and Christina have seen letters. Carl does say that he's never seen the personal letters.
Yeah.
I expect, put that
besides the archivists where the Tolkien family papers are, which is Catherine McElwain at this point, who obviously works very closely and has those papers. They're not available to the public. Carl's saying he hasn't seen them. There's no way to ask for, you can ask, but nobody is given permission to look at those to my knowledge. We'll just have to, wait a century until the family feels like it's appropriate to release more materials. I'm making up a century. I don't know, but it's their papers, and they want them preserved, so they've put them in the archive, which is fantastic. But they're not public. They don't want them public, and that's their right, and I 100% condone that, and those letters should not be seen. I wanted to flip back, though, to the simple little form letters that he signed. I've actually advocating, and I think we have quite a few now in our guide, because from a collector's perspective, again, not the scholarly side now, but the collector's side, that's one of the only ways to get a Tolkien signature, right? If you want a signed Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, you're looking at $50,000, $100,000 to pick up a provenanced, known, signed book. But a little form letter that's sent to a fan just saying, I'm busy, I can't answer your questions, but it has his signature on it. Those are much more affordable, and knowing when they're showing up on the market and what they're selling for is another facet of this guide that I think is important. Is, these are out there on the market. What are they selling for? Can I get one? I want to own a piece of paper that I know Tolkien touched. It's a fantastic part of this, collecting process. So it's interesting. And yeah, I've my Oxenmoot paper just got accepted, and it came directly out of this research. So I want to know what other people are doing from studying Tolkien's writings. It's absolutely fascinating to me. I loved reading these things. I like finding them. I like collecting fanzines where some of his letters were published, and there's all these, this hydra of ideas that can come out of having this information available as a starting point.
We hope people find uses for this that we've never thought of. So that's
Absolutely.
that's the exciting part about it.
Yeah, I started writing an article about how prophesizing, or kind of guessing, how Humphrey Carpenter went about selecting and arranging the letters. Obviously they're chronological, but what he chose to put in and what he chose to remove, and the kind of flow of it. And obviously there is a roundabout way of academic, Middle-earth, etc. But then, of course, HarperCollins announced the new version. So there was no point in me carrying on with that until I now have the new version. So thank you, HarperCollins, for that. I was enjoying writing away, and then, of course, I had thought about the fact that there was this other version of the letters out there. And I thought, well, we're never going to get that. And then, of course, HarperCollins announced it. So at some point, you will see articles on the website about individual letters in general, the history of them. I plan to take individual letters, because some of them have been sold at auction 3 or 4 or 5 times over 30 years. And I want to look at the information that was put out each time, and how the value changed, and where they ended up in the world, and all kinds of interesting things. They probably won't be of interest to research, but they'll definitely be of interest to people who just like information about these things.
We should also be able to show people exactly what the differences are between the 2 versions of letters on the guide, so you'll be able to see very easily what's new, what is new in the new one, and where extra bits have been added into the letters.
Yeah, we've got more than one example where Humphrey Carpenter's book had access to a draft. So Tolkien either kept a carbon copy, or he wrote the letter out once and then changed his mind and wrote out a clean copy. And now, in the 40 plus years since the book was published, the original letter that was sent has shown up on the market, and we've seen it. And there's fascinating comparisons between what we thought he wrote from Carpenter, which he did write. It was a draft of his letter, but there are 2 entries in the guide. There's a draft entry, which is what we've seen from Carpenter, or has been out there, and then we have the actual letter sent because the recipient kept it and then eventually put it up for auction, and the letter is now known what Tolkien actually wrote. So
a perfect example of this is the Rona Bear letter, which was released as a pamphlet by the New England Tolkien Society. It's been published by Carpenter from the draft, which Humphrey Carpenter did not stick to. In one instance, there appears to be a piece of text from a later letter. So there's no way that Tolkien could have sent that one line in the Rona Bear letter. When you come to the original letter that Rona Bear received, that line isn't there. And there's all sorts of things. When you get closer to it, you begin to see the textual detail that Carpenter was really shaping each letter. Not all the time, obviously. Sometimes he could just look at a letter and read it and say, "That's right, put it in." Other times he was cribbing from here and there. He was cribbing lines from other letters, and Tolkien was too. That's one of the interesting aspects that I've come across, is that there are published letters that Tolkien borrowed from 6 or 7 or 8 years later. And he's clearly had his draft or his carbon copy, and he's gone to it, and he's not even made reference to the fact that he sent it previously to somebody else. But there's just all these little oddments that the more you, as you all know, the more you spend with each letter and you find the different sources and everything else, you find out that sometimes Tolkien didn't actually really say that at that time. And it might not have quite meant the same thing. This is what's very interesting about being able to gather all of the different disparate pieces together.
That's true. So I'm running out of steam. I think we've touched on all the topics we wanted to. It's been fantastic talking with the three of you live. We don't do this often enough. We do so much chit-chatting on text messages and forum posts amongst ourselves and stuff. We don't often get the four of us in one room to chat because we're spread all over the world, honestly. So it's great seeing you guys. We have so much more in store. Check out the Tolkien Collector's Guide website. We'll be posting updates. We'll be posting some of our little research projects that we've learned and are enjoying from seeing all of this material. We will be posting news about the forthcoming HarperCollins revised and expanded edition, which is fantastic.
Which
so
we will
exciting.
compare to the original.
Yep. And we will have some additional collaborations, data sharing. There's so much that we want to do and are planning to do. So keep the ideas coming, keep the critiques, constructive criticisms, ideas, typos. You would not believe how impossible it is to publish something with 0 textual errors like typos in it. It's just impossible. And my feelings go out to book editors because it's like no matter how many times you read something and then you print it out and you're like, how did that slip through? It's a never-ending project. I love the three of you guys. It's been fantastic working on it. We do have other scribes who are a little bit more behind the scenes. Thank you to them as well for helping this project get off the ground and continue contributions. And it's only going to get better from here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks,
I hope you
everybody.
enjoy using it.
Yes, please.